listening to the Astral Hour. I'm your host, Astral Meadow. Join me as we take a glimpse into the mysterious. Welcome everyone. Today I'm joined with my beautiful friend Angelyn. She is a trauma therapist and specializes in EMDR. She is an energy healer and galactic medium. She runs Color of Kismet, a small business that creates essential oil blends for emotional and spiritual advancement. Some other projects she's been working on is Grid Knoxville, Grid the Planet, and she also just started a Patreon page where she shares an array of metaphysical information. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming out.
You're so welcome.
It's always good to be in your energy.
Same.
So, all right, let's get started. Could you give us some information on EMDR and how it can be helpful when people are going through trauma therapy?
Yes. Well, the first misconception about EMDR is that it can only be used for trauma. I think it's one of the best ways to deal with trauma that is out there, but it's also helpful for people who have just lived life, you know? Mm-hmm. But you go in through sensory information into your brain, and we find I tell everybody, if all your thoughts are a big plate of spaghetti, you know, just like a mess of noodles, and it looks impossible to deal with and figure out where the beginning is and the end, what we do is we try to find the thing that is connected to as many spaghetti noodles as possible so that we can then clear out. What we're doing is disengaging the connection between your reaction or your trigger and the event or the feeling. Mm-hmm. And so it is, as you can imagine, transformational for people. And I have worked really hard. I've been doing it almost 10 years now. I've been a therapist for 20, but I've been doing EMDR for almost 10. And I have sort of developed this way of doing it where I mix it with energy healing that softens it. Because EMDR is notoriously famous for being very jagged and hard. And it was really difficult watching my clients sort of leave like in not great shape every single time. And so I just really worked hard to find a way that it wouldn't feel so jagged. And that's what I primarily do with people now is EMDR in this way.
Right. It really helped me with the crystals. Like I went and bought a smoky quartz the other day, and it's because when I worked with you, that was one of the things that really helped me process. And like I kind of forgot about it. And then the other day I was like, I need a little support. And I was like, I'm going to get one of those, because every time I would pick that crystal that you offered, and it really was, it just made it like more gentle or something. Like I could process it without like being really triggered. But yeah, the energy work on top of that. And then like I'd go home and take a bath and like the salts, and it was just like little pieces of like comfort while you're going through these really bad experiences in your mind again, you know? And it was intense for me because I'm such a visual, like I'm a very creative person. So when we do EMDR, I would physically go back into these scenes, and I could like smell stuff and, you know, and I think I was dissociated when I was originally in those scenes. So to actually fully be present, you know, and I'm like, wow, like this is really hard. Like I could see why I wasn't wanting to be present back then.
Right.
You know? So I thought that the way that you did it was gentle. And I mean, to do something so like traumatic is like go back to those places. Like you're going to need all the support you can get.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I went through it in my 20s. And it was a very jagged experience. But it also was, there was a very clear line in my life of before EMDR and after.
Oh, yeah.
And it really did, my experience with it solidified my desire to get trained in it. And I sort of spent my early career trying to figure out how I could get trained, you know.
Right. It's been really cool seeing some of the other therapists and stuff doing it now. You know, because when I think about like the therapy we do, it's so spiritual. It's like a different level than like the the ones that you just like Google and come up. But now, those people are like just your everyday therapist, the ones that your insurance, is covering and all that. They're doing EMDR. And I'm like, how beautiful
Yeah, it is
that
good.
it's getting out there. So what does it stand for? Like, could you explain the
It
EMDR?
stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And typically we go in, air quotes, through the eyes. I move my hand back and forth in front of someone, and their eyes go from one side to the other. And my job is to sort of walk them through whatever they're experiencing and to pay attention to all the little micro movements that are happening so I can follow where they are and what's going on. Yeah. And eye movement desensitization and reprocessing is about desensitizing you to a particular memory through eye movement and then reprocessing the whole thing so that
Yeah.
it feels entirely different, so that you can look back at your life and look forward at your life and be present in your life without these filters of belief that you had.
Right. It's like you're free
Yes, you are.
from it. Like it's still there. You're not forgetting
Right.
it. But like,
It's just over there.
right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, like especially on this show because we deal like a lot of people had trauma and like that's how that's kind of how healers usually come about. So they had to process something hard. And so I'll have to like go back to some of these experiences that I've I guess kind of stepped away from. But I'm like I can talk about it and I'm like not super, what I mean?
Yes.
It's like I'm neutral.
Right.
And I'm like, yeah, that's a part of my story, but I'm so much bigger than just my origin story. That's just like one piece to this bigger puzzle. And there was a lot of freedom because I was stuck in that loop of trauma and not able to get past it and just going back and forth in my mind, and when I started EMDR, like the main thing I thought I was going for was just such a small aspect. Like as we started going back and back, in this timeline kind of thing, I was like, oh my gosh, wow, I forgot about that one, and it really helped me with things I wasn't aware was affecting me so much, and that it almost led me to the thing that caused me to come in. But that was just one little part of it, and you're like, wow, this goes really deep. Like, this is like in the womb, like.
Yes. I think that's what people are most surprised by is how they were not expecting the feeling or the belief or, I mean, there's a million of them that plagues them to be something that they could trace back at the end of the day, once they've worked with me, trace back all this way until that one time when you were 3 and your aunt said, whatever to you
Right,
and
right,
you were hurt. And
right,
it was just that little thing that started the whole.
right. Or just some limiting
Yeah.
belief. Maybe it didn't even hurt your feelings, but you were in this moldable point in your life and someone was like, this is bad. And so maybe you hadn't even
Yes.
done it yet or whatever.
Yes.
But like while you were learning, someone was like, this is bad, or you'll go to hell for this, or like, some weird whatever. And then maybe when you were like 16, like years later, you did that thing. And then it just caused this like horrible shame. And you don't even remember, like, why do I feel so bad about this? This is like a human thing, But it's because, Aunt Susie
That
tells
one
you,
time. Yeah.
right. And you don't know the source. But when you do the EMDR, I swear it's like, it's mind blowing.
Some people don't experience that at all. Like some people experience it is mind-blowing. Some people experience memories as they happened.
Okay.
Some people experience metaphor. Like when I went through EMDR, I saw a metaphor, which is really I've only had a couple people do that, but like she would wave her hand in front of my face and I would say, I'm on a turtle's back, and she'd be like,
Wow.
okay, and just keep
Right.
going. And I didn't know what any of that stuff meant, and I would sometimes cry and sometimes not. And I've had people who only like entirely see color and they're like, now it's pink. And I'm like, all right, let's go
That's
with that.
so
And I
wild.
know. So some people never have to visit the memory again.
Okay.
And there's certainly people who come in and they're like, I don't want to revisit that memory.
Mm-hmm.
And I just say, okay, then we will go in through the belief around that memory and we'll find a different memory
Oh.
that belief is in, and we'll do it that way. So that by the time they get to the actual memory that they don't want to talk about, it doesn't hurt as bad.
Right. That's interesting. And it's like, it's up to us how we experience it.
Yeah.
Just like the dream world or the afterlife, it's really different and unique
Yeah.
for each person based on their creativity or what they can handle. You know, that's so cool.
The other thing about it that's crazy good is that it focuses. So when we go in and we begin to do the work, the bilateral work, what you're doing is you're taking this like bundle of nerves in your brain that connects to all the pieces of your brain called the corpus callosum, and we're trying to make it more supple, and we're trying to make it where it gets used to holding all the electricity, because if it's holding all the electricity, then it's making your brain work more efficiently. Right underneath that is your pineal gland. And so lots and lots of people, I came to find out, because when I first started doing EMDR, I was an atheist. And as I was doing EMDR on people, and they were coming in and going, I'm seeing my dead grandmother. And I was like, why is this happening?
Right.
I don't believe in, and ultimately when I began to figure out what was going on, that is what I figured out was happening. And at that point, I became a believer in something.
Right.
And it was an entire paradigm shift for me to go from this is not on my radar at all to I can't deny that this keeps happening to people, that the more well they get and the more they clear this stuff out, the more supple that bundle of nerves is becoming. Their brain is becoming more efficient at processing. Oh, and that's tickling that pineal gland. And so now they're opening themselves up to all this stuff.
Right.
I know.
Wow.
So it is really, it's like the secret spiritual, like clear your trauma, get spiritual all at once. It's crazy.
Right.
I know.
Because, I mean, I feel like that's one of the more healthy ways if you're going to open the third eye like that, to do it while doing kind of shadow work with it. Because this is one of the reasons, like, I'm not against psychedelics, but I try to tell people you're prying it open, the third eye. And so some people are not ready, and I think they have these bad things and they go a little crazy, and it's because it's not ready, and you're not dealing with all the other things around the third eye, that can come out.
I
So
agree.
it makes them like kind of, feel crazy. And I think some of the stuff they see is real, right? But
Totally.
they can't process it because they're
Right.
not doing the other work. They don't have support while they're, you know what I mean?
Yes.
So I'm not like anti-psychedelics, but I'm like, you need to know what you're doing when you're using them, because you're activating a part of yourself that has been, for most people, like not really ever open, or it's been, intentionally like calcified and done, like
Right.
they're trying to get you not to open that space. So when it does, it can be like, whoa. So, but it's beautiful.
It is
And we need
beautiful.
that. We need more people becoming more aware of the higher centers and not just stuck in these lower
Yes.
places. So, yeah, okay. Can you share a little bit about the energy work that you specialize in and what a session with you is like? So, not just the therapy, but when you do like
The energy
yeah.
work. Well, I'm trained in several different kinds of Reiki, and I have also, during different channeling times privately, have been given other light language, energetic work to lay on people, is what they basically showed me, and showed me all of the, so that is a whole thing. Like I call that galactic healing.
Okay.
That is definitely from not me,
Uh-huh.
None of this stuff is from me, if we're honest. And then all of the other Reikis that I have learned, and then also like my own magic. People come in, so sometimes they'll come in, they'll talk about what's been going on. I ask people to set intent for what they want, because I believe it's really important. And then I get my rocks out, the rocks that say they want to be there, and then I get my oils out, the oils that I know will help them do whatever it is that their intent is, and then I work on them. And my office is I've created this construct that has a really high vibe. It's very protected, and so people feel good there. They often feel safe to cry or to talk about, I can't tell you how many times a week people come in, they're like, I don't know why I'm crying, I haven't even talked yet.
Right?
And I'm
Yeah.
like, it's because you feel good, because the space that I have created is a very welcoming space that feels comfortable. And so I feel like it's conducive to healing. And
Mm-hmm.
anyway, and then we're done. We move through the session, and then after it's over, I sit down and I ask what you experienced and if you want to talk about anything that you experienced, and then I talk about what I experienced. And sometimes it's super far out and nuts, and sometimes it's super boring. Sometimes I'm like, well, yeah, I just saw the three guides. They didn't do anything. They just stood there.
Right.
They didn't say anything. They just seemed very glad. And everybody's like, well, people who get that reading are like, well, okay.
Right.
They want all the good stuff, and that's good. But
Right. Okay.
yeah. So there's oftentimes a psychic reading component to it, and
Mm-hmm.
there's often downloads that happen. There's things like that. Yeah, sometimes big stuff, sometimes just getting things in order.
Right. When I go back to the point in my life where I was having pretty regular sessions with you, before I was pregnant, we were combining it with the EMDR, and then after I got pregnant, we couldn't really do the EMDR. So we would do a little talk therapy, and then it was different because I don't know, it's like a different channel because it wasn't just me processing trauma, it was like me healing, in a different way. But before I even knew I was pregnant, okay, we didn't know. And I was laying there and you're like, wow, you're like really soaking up all this energy in this space. Like, I don't think we had put it together yet. But you were like, it's like, I'm having to stay here for a while. Like, I can't give this area enough. And I found out I was pregnant like a week later. And so I was like, definitely you were picking up on it
Mm-hmm.
energetically before we could process it fully. But it was so nice during my pregnancy to have that support, so I'm having the Reiki, but then some of the channeling with the masters that would come in,
Mm-hmm.
like knowing Isis was near me and
Mm-hmm.
like Mother Mary, it just made me feel really safe. And like the experience I was going to have through my pregnancy was sort of like, it's like divine timing. It was like, if these beings are showing up for the birth of this child,
Mm-hmm.
like I think it's all gonna, it's gonna work out. And it was like I could just trust it, and I was in fear mode.
Mm-hmm.
Like I did a lot of fear therapy, but it was like I could finally just like not worry about it,
Mm-hmm.
and just put it in your hands or the divine or whatever in those moments. And I was like, I don't know if I can do this. But there's something about Isis walking into the room that just
Yeah, you change your mind. You're
yeah.
like, well, maybe I can do
Right.
it.
Yeah. So it's a special thing. So,
Yeah, thanks.
and the crystals,
Yeah.
they make it different than some of the other Reiki stuff because
Yes,
I don't know, I feel like it's like gridding the body like
it
before you
is.
even get started. And then sometimes you're like singing and it's like
Mm-hmm.
every time it would be different,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes I would cry, but it wasn't like I was happy or sad. Like my eyes would just start watering, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, I just released something. I don't know what it was.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes it'd be like a week later, I'd be like, oh, like I would have some epiphany about some sensation that had
Yes.
happened. But it actually, sometimes it would take me a while to be like, what exactly opened that day? But I don't know. I feel like it also like put me in an alignment where I started attracting people because like I'm getting this energy work done. It's putting me at a higher vibration. So then I could finally attract people at that same level. And then I'm like, oh, is this my soul tribe? Like, it's like I could
Yes.
finally find the people, not just these people that were in trauma, which is where I came from, which, those people need energy work. And I'm not like against being around those people, but to actually start making connections with people that were also in the healing process and not just in like a
Yeah.
grieving or a bad, and it was definitely a huge part of me shifting into my soul tribe. And it's funny because you didn't even like we weren't aware, but like I would meet somebody and they're like, yeah, I've been working with Angelyn. And I'm like, of course you have. That's probably why you found me.
Yes.
So like I could see how your work was affecting all the energy around me and like the people around me.
Yes.
And we didn't even realize that you were working with all of us. You know, you're like, oh wow, okay, like so you
That's like
get
my favorite thing. That's my
yes,
favorite thing. There's I heard, as I was telling you earlier, I heard early on that I'm a healer of healers, that I'm
mm-hmm,
supposed to keep the healers well. And any healer that need, like, that's my purpose. And
right,
so I trust that the people who show up are the people who are going to be moving on and creating something, just like
right,
you're doing this. And
mm-hmm,
and like, and I say this too. I want to live in a healthy community,
right,
and I want my community to feel good. And
mm-hmm,
I don't, I don't care that I don't care that I'm like the resident therapist. Like, it
right,
doesn't matter to me. I want to. This is the gift I have. I want to be able to help, just like you have this gift and he has that gift, and
right,
you know. I don't know. I feel like sometimes with therapists, it's very easy to get stuck in this patriarchal view, that,
mm-hmm,
well, they're a therapist, so they must have this kind of life and know these kinds of things. And
mm-hmm,
so she probably thinks this about me. And
right,
it's all bullshit, man. That's just, am I allowed to say that? Like,
yeah,
it's not, that is patriarchy. That is not
right,
where we are. We are not there. I am just a person, just like you. My kid's really good at drawing.
mm-hmm,
Well, great. I'm really good at therapy. He can
right,
bring his drawing and his art to people at age 7, and I can bring my therapy, and
right,
we can all have our place.
right. I did some, I don't know, like traditional therapy. I don't know. I just basically picked somebody that my insurance covered, right? I just was like that person. And I would go and I would talk and they would just like write and they're like, okay, I'll see you next week. And I'm like, but I felt like like, there was something different because I felt like you were really listening. We had almost like a similar kind of like experience, like the origin story. So you shared a little bit about how, you also might have went through some of this growth. So it made me feel like, okay, I'm not just some random person. She's like, she sees things in me and like you inspired me like to want to grow. And like, it was like you could see me in a way that I couldn't see myself
Yeah.
yet. And like when I would look at the way you looked at me, I was like, what is she seeing? But
Aw.
like there was something there. I was like, you could see it energetically, and it made me feel special. Like I had this purpose, and I don't know, it's just different. And I'm not against like all therapy's good, right? Like whatever you can afford, whatever's you know what's accessible is better than nothing. But yours was definitely what I needed at the time, and it was very transformative, you know?
Yay.
So, and I still think about it all the time, even though it's been a while, because my kids don't really allow me to go to therapy right now, but I
Yes.
still will hear like your voice in the back of my head or just like remember something maybe that we talked through. And so I feel like it's very quantum where it's like still
Mm.
some of it maybe I'm just now figuring out,
Mm-hmm.
like, but it was something we did a couple of years back.
That's
And
really good feedback, because that's my intent when I do work, is that for however long it takes to figure this thing or that thing out, that they are still receiving.
right.
And um, that's really great to hear,
Yes,
honestly.
I feel like it's healed me on this timeline, and I actually feel there's this feeling about me that my next incarnation will be impacted and grateful for the work that I did with you here. And they'll be like, "Thank you.
That's wonderful.
Thank you for doing the putting the time in because now I can, start off in a
Hmm.
better way than we did last time." So,
My very first talk that I did on my Patreon page
mhm.
was why 3D therapy doesn't always work.
Mm,
And my view is that I do therapy on a multidimensional plane,
right.
and my intent is to heal all of those, versions, all the timelines, all of that, as much as we can get done in the amount of time we have.
Right.
And so that's, I know that that's what happens, and so it's really great to be able to hear about it. Like, that's
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah, it's taken me a while to reflect back to think, oh wow, this is still working. So I don't know.
All right. I
Yeah.
love it.
Yes, I love it a lot. That's all I'm like, I gotta get her on. I gotta share this with people because it's different. you know,
Yeah.
and no, I don't think people know about it because it's not really talked about. You know, they think of just the traditional therapy. They don't
Yes.
even realize that there's people trained in this way, but that also have these different, I don't know, modalities that are added onto it that really allow you to get into different levels or
Yes.
deeper states, you
Mm-hmm.
know? So it's like we did EMDR, but sometime there was one time we did like I kept having this dream, you know, over and over and over again. And we were like, well, let's go there. And I was like, I can go there with you, okay.
Yeah.
But like that, like what other therapist is gonna do that with me? You know, most therapists would be like, oh, she is crazy, you know. Like, but it always felt like I could be myself around you, and you wouldn't just label me as like, oh, she has a very big fantasy life, like she's making all this stuff. It's like you were like even if you didn't understand it, you understood that it was coming from somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
and that I was a very rational person. I'm not just, you know, like I'm not going to pay the money to go to therapy just to make this crap up so that you are my
Right.
friend or something. It's
Right.
like you're like, okay, well, let's get to that. Like, let's see what that
Mm-hmm.
means. So even with like down to dream interpretation and stuff like that is a really cool feature to have in a
Thanks.
therapist.
Thank you.
Yes, I love it. So, let's see. What inspired you to create Color of Kismet, and how do these oil blend combinations come about? What are some of the ways that they help people?
Okay, so Color of Kismet came about entirely through channeled stuff,
Mm.
through meditations early on. There was a point when I started seeing um, the far out, the like future version of what it was going to look like, which seem even still to me now really far out. Like
Uh
it
huh.
doesn't even seem real yet, the way that I was shown at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and little by little, I just visited this meditation, and I listened, and I got little pieces. Well, then one day I was meditating, and I go to a garden when I meditate.
Mm-hmm.
I walk down these steps and I go to this garden and I sit by this water, and my old dog is there with me, and I go to this same garden every time I meditate.
Mm-hmm.
And I got down there one day and I noticed there was a basket of herbs, of like medicinal things that I didn't know what they were. Like I knew what one thing was, and I was like, this is weird. Especially in my garden, it's mine, that I
Right.
created in my mind. So who's here, you know? And and then I realized one day that I was supposed to do something with that. And so I thought, well, gosh, you know, I don't know what I do or what I even could bring that this would doesn't make any sense to me. And then one day I was playing with my essential oils, and I like to do that. I've done that for years and years and years. I've
Mm-hmm.
made stuff for people and made stuff for myself based on nothing except what I liked.
Right.
And I was playing with my essential oils, and I was like, oh,
Right.
oh, and then it felt like 15 timelines collapsed. Boom.
Mm-hmm.
And I immediately knew that was exactly right. I'll never forget where I was standing in my house. I'll never forget the way my heart started beating faster. And I started feeling heat on my hands, on the palms of my hands. And so I started to rub, like just hold my hand above my oils, and it would get burning hot. And I would pull out the oils that were underneath my hand when it was burning hot. And then I would have this like jumble of oils. And then I take each one and I hold it in my hand after,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll hear a number, or not at all. And so sometimes I just put them back. And then if I hear a number, then that's the amount of drops it gets. And then after I create the thing, usually I'll have like an idea of what I'm making or making it for, but sometimes I don't. Sometimes it's like, well, this is the recipe I was given, and so let's figure out what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the long answer, I guess, of how every recipes come to me. And then after I go through all of the things that are in something and meditate on what, because, you know, every single thing has different aspects of it. So, what piece of sandalwood, like, why is sandalwood in this particular thing? I think it's because of this. And I go through and I'll ask, is it this? Is it this? Is it this? And when I hear this one, then that's what I write down, and then sometimes I'll have like a picture. Okay, this one is about ancestral trauma. This one is about helping ease transitions. This one is about getting your throat and your root and your solar plexus in line. This one is about grounding, and that's how they've come. And
Wow.
that's how my business is. And it's an internet-based business mostly. I go to events sometimes, but for the most part, it's local people that I know and who believe in what I do and have used the products. They're incredible.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, the first one I ever had from you was from our fear class that we did, and it was a special one made just for me. So you like sat there with me, and I think one of them you even you let me feel guided to some of them, and we made our own blend. But like where you put it on your body is different, and all that. I was like, what the heck is this?
Yeah.
But it makes sense. I mean, smell is one of our senses. There's obviously a lot that can be done, and I'd seen a lot of people selling essential oils, but they just are focused on like the one thing that this one does. And it's very a physical thing. But to me, smell is it can be spiritual. It can induce certain states. I feel like it can bring up past lives because you're thinking about, okay, I was, maybe I worked with rosemary,
Yeah.
in like an epoch ago or something, so there's this vibration to the smells. It's not just like the vitamins or something like that with the herbs. Like you think about herbs like from a tea perspective, like they're going in and they're healing, but the smell itself is healing, and I didn't really think about it that way until I started working with
It's its
you.
own vibration.
Yes, it
Yeah.
is. And we forget about
Yeah.
smell. So yeah, it's a really cool experience, and I've had the salts. I've had a couple of different ones now, and some of the sprays and the rollers, and it really has the different ones have helped me and my husband through different things. And I'm like things that could be hard, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go, spray most, and it's like I can like the smell itself puts me in a different state. It's like,
Yes.
okay, I can be present now. Now we'll
Yes.
talk about it because now I feel grounded and safe, or
Yes.
whatever. I can't explain it, but it definitely has helped me in different ways. So,
Good. Yes,
yeah.
I use them every day. Before I got here, I used Alignment with Soul Purpose and what's the other one I used? Insight. And I use them so that, in case you ask me any questions that I didn't know or that I felt nervous about, that I could see all the lines and that I would stay on track, that this is not about me. This is about like the larger purpose,
Right.
and
Okay.
where this is all going and what what does this podcast mean and the whole thing, and that we just
Right.
stay on whatever track we're supposed to be on. And
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's so cool. And I just love the thought of combining it with spirituality, and like
Yes.
the essence of the smells
Yeah,
and all
thanks.
that. And I kind of do that energetically before a show. I just sort of meditate and just try to tune in and think, okay, what comes out is what's meant to come out. And there's sometimes I'll have this plan and like I'll start to try to talk about it and I'm like, I can't remember. And I'm like, it's because I'm not supposed to bring that up this episode. Maybe there needs to be some background work done before I bring that concept up. So I'm
Yeah.
always like I open up that place for us before we start the show, and then I trust that what
Yeah.
comes out is gonna come out. And sometimes the show might end early, and I'm like, it's this is just where it's supposed to end.
Yeah.
Like I can't help it. We didn't make it to an hour, but like we covered it.
Mm-hmm.
So this is it. This is what it's supposed to be like. So yeah. Um. All right. So how has being a galactic medium helped you with working with your clients? We kind of talked about that, but I mean, you could give it maybe a little background on how you became a galactic medium.
Well, I was sitting at my dining room table one day where I like to do my work, and the sun was shining, and I was like, oh, what a beautiful moment to meditate. And so I
Mm-hmm.
just stopped what I was doing, and I put everything down, and I closed my eyes, and I felt the sun on the right side of my body, and I turned my face to the sun, and the next thing I knew, I was in this entirely different place.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it sounds insane to even think about it in my own mind right now, but I was taken to this other place and shown what I was supposed to be doing, that I was supposed to be like, here's what you do on the human body to open up, blah, 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 blah. Here's how you can help people adjust to the vibrations that are coming in right now. Here's how you can, here's the symbol to put on their sacral as, you know, fill in the blank, fill in the blank. And I was really, I asked if I could write all this stuff down. They said yes, so I opened my eyes and wrote it all down, and then closed my eyes and was right back. And since that day, I asked if I could access them whenever I wanted. Like, would I be able to access them or others like them? And they said yes, that I just needed to ask. And so I ask. And so what the galactic mediumship, so that was the day that I feel like was my first sort of opening into that world. And since then, I ask when I'm working on somebody if there are any beings or entities from places that this person originates from, or whatever, you know, whatever the overlap is, if there's anything that has something. And often they do. And I've seen all kinds of crazy stuff. But mostly I like to access whatever healing from that time or space, or it's very, I'm finding right now, not easy to talk about. It's like, do you understand what I mean, though? Okay. Yeah. Like, if you have Arcturian DNA, let's say, in you, which, I mean, I do. That's something I have. Then I would say, I don't know. I think it's Arcturian. Hey, Arcturians, is there anything that, you know, this person needs? And they'll be like, this isn't Arcturian. This is blah, 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 you know?
Right.
And I'll be like, okay, well, can you guys help? And, you know, and then they'll show me where to put my hands. Sometimes they'll show me shapes or things that need to be drawn, like light language that needs to be drawn on somebody. Sometimes they'll, I'll see what looks like glittery snow, and I know that means it's time for a download. And I'll ask the person if they're open to that, and if they say yes, then I'm like, okay, and then I let it happen. So there's all kinds of ways. But I feel like for the most part, it's about upgrades or clearing out old junk. That's what I feel like it mostly is.
So do you feel like you're mostly tuning into Arcturians? Is that where most of the downloads are coming from? Or is it different?
It's different
for each.
But I do feel, my very first was Arcturian.
Right.
And I didn't even know what that meant. I didn't know. I looked it up after, and I was like, oh, well, I mean, that makes sense, I guess. You know, it's all about open-heartedness and, you know, higher dimensional love. And which I got that. You know, I can open my heart. And so I think that's probably, I know there's a connection in my own personal DNA with that. Yeah. And so I think that's where I went first. But since then, I have been attuned to other energies too. And so I will ask them. And there's trillions, zillions that I'm not attuned to, or that I have no idea exist yet, or whatever. And I just trust that as I can handle it in my own body, that they will come in. And as my vibration gets better and better, that I will be able to do more and more.
Right, more will come in and be discovered even, you know, because I feel like Arcturians, I had this BQH session, and I specifically at the end wrote questions out because I wanted to know. Okay. And I was like, am I connected to Arcturian, and why? And am I connected to Pleiadians? And Arcturians this is weird because every time I've never channeled, but each one would come through and my voice would shift and they would be like, we are here. And they, and like, but the Arcturians were like, it's not that I'm like from that energy, but they're just working so much with us collectively that once you start raising your vibration, like you're going to put out the beam and they're going to just start, you know,
that makes sense,
working with you. And that's basically what they were saying. It's like, we do work with Astral, She's not necessarily from our
Mm-hmm.
star system, but we have noticed her,
Mm-hmm.
and we work with her. But the Pleiadians were the ones that said they had been with me since my birth. And that they had been protecting me. They didn't say what they were protecting me from, but basically, like putting some kind of field around me where I wouldn't be seen from certain energies, right?
So that's interesting because in this channeling, in this initial one, that was one of the things that the Arcturians said was that the Pleiadians have protected many of us until,
So that we could make it
so
to
that
a
we can
certain
get to
point.
that point, right? That's so cool. I love
Yes.
it when things line up like that. Yeah. Because I did understand that day that many of us, and I don't know if that means many of us in general or many of us light workers, I didn't ask, are Pleiadian and Arcturian. Like we have a lot of that, like vibration,
Uh huh.
whether we have that DNA or not. Yeah.
Right. Whether we were like actually incarnated from there at one point, or like I've been looking into astrology. I don't know if you've ever known this, okay, but this is something that really blew my mind. Is like in our charts, there's certain degrees within certain signs that can show which stargate that you have incarnated in.
What?
And it literally blew my freaking mind. And when I looked, and I can't remember, I think it might have been a 26-degree Taurus or something like that, but it was Pleiadian. It was the Pleiadian Stargate. And I did Justin's, and we had already heard an Akashic reading that he was Syrian. And his was in his chart. He had the
Shut up.
degree. I'm not
I
kidding.
love this.
I'll find it and send it to you. But it really was like, wow, like you can't tell me that that wasn't like at some point
Yeah.
I wasn't going to discover this,
Right.
So, and when I asked about like Syrian, because I was like, well, Justin, has that. So maybe, and they were like, we do not work with her. Like they just came straight up. They're like, we do know who you're talking about basically, but she's not one of ours. But then I discovered, okay, I never told you this, that my cat allergy is because at some point one of my incarnations was on a planet or an energy that was not like battling the Lyrans, but there was this like bias, right? That they were like, oh, the feline right or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And that somehow when I incarnated, I still had this weird, download. Yes. And that I'm allergic to cats. They were like, if you can move past this, you can, deal with your cat allergy. And I was like, that
Wow.
just blew my mind. I never thought about it like that. But it was
Me
just
either, but it makes perfect
some
sense.
weird thing. This is like EMDR when you're like, you don't realize something that
Yeah.
when you were two. Well, I didn't realize that, however many lifetimes ago.
Right.
Like, I never would have processed that. But thank goodness for these weird channelings,
Mm-hmm.
right? That like bring that clarity. Because,
Mm-hmm.
like, how the heck would I was ever going to figure that one out,
Right.
So I've got a lot of healing to do, apparently, with that.
Over that cat allergy. The
Yes.
Lyrans.
Yeah, so it's really cool. I love talking about the starseed stuff. There's a group in like a couple weeks that I'm gonna go to, and it's in Knoxville. And I was like, it's starseed meetup.
Oh, cool.
So I was like, I didn't know that there was like other people, that was into this, but
We're organizing.
yes,
That's cool.
and it's starting to make me feel a little less weird because I've never really talked about this stuff with many people. And when I do, they're like, what? But like to know that there's like 20 people that are going to be at this thing and we've all had some kind of experience. I mean, the first time with me, it was, well, I'd already like heard of Pleiadians. That word kept coming up and coming up. But during a reading, it kept saying you're a star seed, and all this, and then I started hearing more about Pleiadians, and I was like, oh my gosh, I think that this is it. This is the origin, or there's something to it.
Mm-hmm.
And my main spirit guide that I see, she looks like Galadriel, and she has long blonde hair, and like, I don't know, like when I look at like artists' interpretations of what they see when they like channel Pleiadian,
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, oh my god, it looks they look like kind of elvish, and that's how I'm seeing them.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, it made me feel a little less weird that other people see them the same way. And, obviously they have many different ways of appearing to people,
Mm-hmm.
but there are some people that see them like I see them. So I'm like, I'm not alone.
That's really cool. I'm really glad to know that there's a group forming or that's been formed around here. I mean, as
Yes.
you can imagine, in my office, I see a lot of people that 15 minutes deep into the first session, I'm like, well, this person is definitely a starseed,
Right.
and then I go through do I bring it up? Do I say that? Like,
Right.
I'll wait. I most often wait until they
Mm-hmm.
know me a little bit better, and
Right.
so that I can say things like that. But you can imagine there's a lot of people that come into my office that are starseeds, and I have wanted for some time for us to sort of find each other, because part of being a starseed is feeling really different
Right.
and really
Very
alone.
isolated.
Yeah, and the whole, that feeling of loneliness that you feel when you think I'm the only one that is this weird. And I've
Mm-hmm.
always Astral, I've always been the weirdest one in the room, like everywhere I go. And
Yeah.
I had a lot of social problems as a younger person because I was always the weirdest one in the room.
Yeah. Me too.
Um, but I can only imagine like what it's going to feel like when we're all, together.
Yeah.
But I've read before that the call out, that like that feeling in your body of loneliness and aloneness, is the actual law of attraction working to pull them in. Like
Right. Because
it
they're feeling that same way.
yes. And so every time that I feel that loneliness, I
Yeah.
remind myself that all that is the call out to bring more people around, more people,
Uh-huh.
more people. So I never think it's wasted anytime if somebody comes into my office and they're like, I'm so tired of feeling alone. And I'm like, that's a call out. You're in good
Right.
shape.
Right. Like it's just showing them that maybe they haven't met the
Right,
people yet. Like they're alone because they're still aligning to that. You
right.
know, in one of my Akashic readings, she told me that I incarnated with 98 other people. Like, and we all shared the same mission or like overall vibration or purpose. And that we were separated, and so that, but we travel in pods and like whales. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so every time we incarnate, we come in, during the same, it's not like we're all the same age, but we come in together, so where we will cross each other eventually.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been traveling together for a while, but lately I've been meeting people, and I brought this up on my last episode, and they're like, I think we had a past life together. And I'm like, really? But I think what is happening is that I'm finding my pod.
Yeah.
I'm calling it my soul tribe or whatever, but that's what they were talking about. And especially like doing stuff like a podcast, I'm literally like putting out the signal.
Yes.
They're able to find me. And I do have people that, have told me, like, I've listened to this, and it's the first time I've ever felt, like there's other people like me, and I'm like, that's how I felt. That's why I'm
Aw,
doing this.
that's the best.
Yeah. So I'm like, eventually my pod and me, we're going to be, swimming together soon. And can you even imagine when we all finally
Yeah,
connect,
I
what's going to
can.
happen?
I
Yeah, you
can.
can.
I
It's
can. I'm excited about
beautiful.
it.
Yes. But
Yeah.
it's coming. And like, but yeah, it was isolation for so long. But
Mm-hmm.
every time I meet one of these people, which I think are in the pod, it's like I get another piece of the story or
Mm-hmm.
something, or like they complete a part of me, and they like inspire me to grow, and I inspire them to grow, and we
Yeah,
start
that's,
stepping into our true
yes.
self. And it's like we all forgot until we meet each other, and we're like, oh, I remember you in
Yes.
that one life. I remember you
Yeah.
now.
I think that it collapses timelines. Like, I really believe that as energy workers meet each other, or as light workers, I don't love that term, but like as we meet each other,
Mm-hmm.
that we not only activate each other for whatever we need.
Mm-hmm.
You have vibrations that I don't have, and vice versa. So
Right.
us just sitting here, you're activating me and I'm activating you, which is really
Right.
cool.
Yes. Awesome. I love this. I'm so excited. I didn't even know we were going to go into Starseed stuff, but that makes me
Yay.
happy. So could you tell us a little bit about the healing hour that you've been doing, and what are some of the things
Yes.
that you all work on during that hour?
Oh, the healing hour is so magical.
Yeah?
And I will maintain that it is, if you are on a budget, this is the best way to get three really heavy hitting healers all at once for $100, which is really kind of unheard of.
Right.
But what we do is we see, so there's two other people and myself, and we see, so it's David Arms and Ryan Teeter and
Mm-hmm.
myself, and we see four people per hour. And we have these massage tables in the room, and we invite everybody to lie down, and then we bring everybody in through, thought, and then we get started. And it's like we rove. So I put rocks on people and I do oils, and all three of us do energy work. And so David might go to this person over here, and I might go to this person over there, and Ryan starts at this person back there. And then David will get done and move to the fourth person, and then I'll get done and move to the person David just left, and Ryan will get done and move to the person that I'm working on, and we'll work together for a little while. We just sort of move as we're led. And I think that's the thing that's so beautiful is we're all entirely, like, our intent is to remove that which needs to be removed and to heal that which needs to be healed. And so that is our expectation.
Right.
And so people are walking out with these really incredible experiences and are really sort of floored. Like, it feels not believable, I think, to some people. And sometimes to us, we'll finish at the end of it's every third Sunday. And so we'll finish at the end of that day and just sort of look at each other and go, wow, that was cool. And once again, one of the things we noticed early on is that there's some kind of magic that is happening that is not for everybody else, but is for us. And we really maintain and believe that when we get together and work with that intent together in that way, we're doing something to our own vibrations that is like unspeakable, because what happens after that, and we're to the point now where we kind of joke, we've been doing it for a year now. And so we'll show up the next month and go, well, what insane way did your work evolve this month, And it's like, well, since the last time we all got together and did this is what's happening with me in my work. This is what I'm noticing. And what we'll find is that there are patterns a lot of times, which is crazy good.
Yeah.
So we're each learning about our own magic. We're learning about the magic that we can create together. And it's really, it's been a very humbling and a very moving experience that all of us are so committed to. Like, all three of us are really committed to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. I always think, and I think I've brought this up before, but like this Bible verse where it's like when two or more gather. But I think about it, it's different working like, you're working on me, but if you have three people, can you, that's like way more, that's like when the divine is like there, right? Because you're creating like a different energy. And like there was a girl that came on the other day for reconnective healing, and she made me think about it differently, because with Reiki, I always had it as like it's moving through you. But she was like, I receive, and because we are one, then you receive. But like that's like the healer heals because they receive the frequency. And so even though like they might have not needed that, for themselves, like they end up receiving it for this other person as that person heals, because you are connected.
Yes.
You receive healing and you're not even aware of it, you know, because it's some unconscious thing maybe, but it took that person needing the healing for you to receive
what I needed.
Yes.
Yes.
So it's such a cool symbiotic kind of relationship between the healer and the client, I guess.
It's very harmonious.
Yeah.
And I feel like that is, when we started this, that was what I really wanted. I believed that if my vibration was here and you laid Ryan's on top and then you laid David's on top, that together it would be this beautiful harmony. And it would be true no matter what three of us it was. You doing that with me and Ryan is going to be, we can heal this one thing over here maybe.
Right.
And, maybe with David and Ryan and we can heal this other thing.
Right.
Or maybe with you and David and somebody else, you heal this entirely different thing. But that's what community is. Like, that's what being part of a whole is.
And like the blending of the energy. So I think about like, I like to make my own paint colors and stuff. And, every time I make purple, it's a different shade. It's like, it's really hard to recreate it exactly unless I write the formula down, but it's a little different. So when you have, if this person's blue, this person's green, and it's always going to come out as a different product each time. So I guess I think about it. But color's vibration, right? So that's sort of on some level,
it's not different than my oil blends. It's like if you take the vibration of, rosemary and lay it with dill, then you lay it with fir and you lay it with, 4 or 5 other things, then you have an entirely different magic than you would have if
Right.
you left out the one thing.
Right.
And that's exactly, it's exactly what we're trying to do. It's just a macrocosm of the same. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, everything really is vibration. Like all the senses end up
Yes.
coming back down to vibration. So it all corresponds
Hmm.
because it's at the end of the day, it's kind of just a frequency anyways. It's not,
Right.
like yeah, we see it as three-dimensional, but it's like beyond that, and yet it can even be more simplified than that,
Yes.
as just a blending of frequencies.
That was early on, as I started like getting all the meditations and the visions and all the things that were happening to me, because it all happened very, very quickly for me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, one of the things that I began to understand is that um, you mentioned earlier that a lot of people on this path come to it through some sort of awful event that they had to figure out, and like
Mm-hmm.
it's that devotion to figuring out that thing that helps you figure out where you are. But all these experiences carry vibration. So when you feel sad, or when you feel like your heart is broken, when you feel grief at its utter core, you know the vibration and you never forget it. And
Mm-hmm.
so much of this work is vibrational alchemy. Like I tell people that all the time. It's when you walk in the room and you're feeling grief, I know it because I
Right.
can feel it because I've felt it. I
Right.
know what grief feels like.
Right.
And I know that means also I know the oils that will help. I know the rocks that will help. I know the songs that will help. Um, some bring comfort, some ease trauma, some help with memories. They all have sort of their different thing.
Right.
But I believe a lot of our experiences is because we have to be able to identify the vibration later.
Right.
Hmm.
Especially like if you are destined to be a healer,
Yes,
because how can you fully relate, right?
right.
If you haven't seen it, unless you just really like seen a lot of the stories and like you've seen it through just the empathy.
Hmm.
But yeah, going through it, I mean, you're like, oh wow. And it's like I can look at somebody,
Hmm.
I can look at their face and see if they're grieving. I can look at their eyes,
Yes,
I
because
can,
you know it that intimately.
oh yeah,
Hmm.
so deeply. And so it's like no words have to be even spoken at
Yes.
that point, where I feel like if you were incarnated in this beautiful life and your parents were great and no one's ever been mean to you and what it might happen, I don't know, they might not be able to see it as easily, but and I'm not saying they can't heal you, but I don't know, I feel like for me I felt more comfortable working with you because I was like, she gets it, right? She knows how much this hurts, like as I'm going through it, and I like trusted that we would go as deep and like that you could see like, okay,
Hmm.
we're going to take a break for today,
Yeah.
because you knew what was coming out and you could really
Yes.
say, okay, that's enough for now.
Yeah.
So, but it's because you had done the same thing. And then you were just there like at the perfect time for me. So it was awesome. So, all right, could you share a little about your Patreon page and give some examples of the topics that you focus on there?
Yes. So this is something that I just launched, and I feel a lot of excitement around it. It feels good to me to share in this way. It's like I finally, for so long, I resisted the value, like, oh, I can't, I'm not, nobody wants. There were all these messages from my entire life telling me, and ultimately it's like, whatever, who cares? I'm doing this, and because I could sit around and talk about this stuff literally all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I do, in fact, and many of my friends, their eyes gloss over and they're just done hearing, not really, but the truth is I enjoy talking about this stuff, and I really love teaching people. And
Mm-hmm.
that comes through, I believe. That's what I want to come through. So I created this so that people of all levels might be able to experience something different or new, or that helped them or helped them understand a situation that they're in their lives. Um, so every month I do a guided meditation, I do a tarot reading for the month, I do 2 talks, and I do a sigil. And then I also do a live chat. Um, the talks that I've done, so the first month was about why 3D therapy sometimes doesn't work, which I mentioned before. And I also did carnelian. Um, and then the second month, because we've only been around for October, November of this year, so I'm getting everything ready for the December month or third month. But for November, we did aquamarine, and I also did, it comes out next week, a talk on conditional love and transactional love and why, like what it looks like. Because I think a lot of people don't really understand what it looks like and that we do it all the time and it's not bad. It's just that, let's put it here and understand what it is um, and let's move more toward this place, which is, neutrality and being able to love people through
Right.
whatever's happening. So I'm really focused on dissolving polarity. I think that that's what my purpose is right now. That my voice is supposed to reflect neutral, like spiritual neutrality,
Mm.
and while teaching people. So that's what I'm trying to do. And um, if you're not familiar with Patreon, it's where basically you find people who do art or talk about stuff that you think is really cool and you want to support them doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And you can support them through a small, like sometimes you can do like $2, $3 for a couple things a month. My lowest is $5 a month, and then it
Mm-hmm.
goes up to 15. And you know, I don't have any idea where it's going to go, but I'm just going to keep doing it. And because I love it and I'm passionate about it. And most of my hangups are around like um, software and how
Uh-huh.
to do this kind of thing. And
Right.
it's so foreign to me that it's previously been roadblock
Right.
foreign. And I'm just now getting to the point where I'm like, okay, it doesn't have to be perfect. You don't
Right.
have to look perfect. You don't have to sound perfect. You can
Mm-hmm.
clear your throat. It's fine.
Right.
It doesn't have to be what in your mind you think it has to be. It
Uh-huh.
because it already is that. It's
Right.
already that. All you have to do is just show up. And
Right. It,
so
it just has to be recorded so that
that's
people
it.
can
Right.
receive it.
We have to start with that. Yeah.
Yes.
Record
And
it.
and you grow, like that's the thing, like with the podcast, like it was so overwhelming. Like what mic do I get? How do I plug it into the
Mm-hmm.
computer? Well, how.
Mm-hmm.
And but I had to keep sticking with it even though I was like I wanted to start thinking of the content. I wanted to start I'm like I can't invite people yet. I have to build it. But yeah, I was just like one thing at a time. But I was like that's the work that you put in, right?
Yeah.
Is this thing that's uncomfortable.
Right.
But once you get past it and you can focus on the content, then you're there, right? And
Yes.
but it's like it's almost like there has to be some kind of thing for you to walk through, like some tribulation, so you can be like, no, I'm really dedicated. I'm gonna figure out the software, and I'm going to do this. This is my calling. So
Yes.
I think it's cool, like something like Patreon or even like recording something on YouTube is you meet someone out and you start talking about something, but you're limited. You're
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, I gotta leave in 10 minutes, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But you can be like, oh, I talk about this on my Patreon page. You can
Yes.
go there and find out more. And
Mm-hmm.
so, and it's forever there. It's like this
Mm-hmm.
beautiful thing. And like, there's been a couple people on the show, and I'm like, you should record yourself because I am so grateful to Manly P. Hall and Alan Watts and
Mm-hmm.
the the people that had access to the technology. Did they understand it at the time? Maybe not, but they were like, I'm going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to figure this out. And I listen to them, to this day, and I am so grateful. And I'm like, oh my gosh, thank you for those hours that you spent sitting down with that recorder
Mm-hmm.
because it changed my life. So I'm like, it seems hard to do the recording, and it seems like, oh, I don't want to deal with that. But you're not always going to be in this body. You're not always going to have the truths that you have right now. So it's important to document it and to share it while you are here because we don't
Yes.
know how long we're going to be here.
You're so right.
Yeah, but that frequency, once you record it and you hit record and you
Yeah.
share it and it's out there, it is always there. And I mean, unless the whole matrix collapses and lose all the technology, but then even the seeds that were planted, even if all the technology went away and no one could listen anymore, like the people that had already heard it before then, even. I mean, so you're just like reaching people that you couldn't reach
And
physically.
you're right. And the other thing is there was a point when I just kept hearing, you have to teach classes, you have to teach classes. And I remember being like, I don't want to. I don't want to though. Like
Right.
that's not something, I'm not a teacher. I don't want to teach classes. And it was so loud. It was like, just do it anyway, do it anyway.
Right.
And find things that you're interested in. And so I would labor over what in the world I was going to teach a class on. I was doing this series that I called Metaphysics 101. Like 3 people came to 4 classes, okay? And the rest of them were empty. Okay, this was 100% a lesson for Angelyn. This was not for me to get my name out there or for people to actually find me. This is about Angelyn honing in, and at the end of it all, you know what? I learned so much more about the basics, about, like I did this intensive on how the law of attraction works. It was over 2 weeks. You know how many people showed up? 2? Collective, like both? 0. However, I did a deep dive on the law of attraction, and I will never be sorry that I did that because I studied it for a month so that I could explain it in the most simple terms, and it helped hone in for me how to manifest in such a different way, like how to live my life, not just how to manifest, but how to live my life in an entirely different way with this entirely different construct. And there's no amount, if 25 people showed up to that class, it still would be about what I took home, about how I did all the prep work and all of that. So I really believe that even if technology goes down the toilet, that the vibration, you're totally right. It's like taking a frisbee and throwing it out into the world and watching it like grow wings. And because somebody, even if it was just me, got it in this other way that is really important. And that person is going to talk to other people, is going to talk to other people. And there's no way that you can measure what the outcome, like how much good you're putting into the world that way.
You don't know. You don't know how far it's going to travel.
It could travel. It could be bouncing off the ethers 1 billion years from now, like somewhere,
Right.
Yeah, and they'll be like, listen to this crazy broad.
Right.
They didn't know anything back then.
Right. Right. But you can see, this was a stepping stone for this next phase. So thank goodness for her because, you know, yeah, it's really a cool thing. I think it's really good. Like the people I've been working with will talk about an episode. I think it's good for them because maybe they haven't taught a class, but it's just something they're really knowledgeable of because they've never pulled, because we know all these things, right? We read all these books. It's the crazy scattered thing. And like, so sometimes we talk and it comes out and it sounds clear, but like, it's hard for us to think, how can I teach this ABCD? You know, how can I? So it forces us, you know, as we're putting on this show to think, how can I explain this in layman's terms? How can I, and I feel like, so they do the episode, they go on and this topic comes up and they're like, I know exactly how to teach this to you because I pulled all those concepts together and I made something out of them, you know, where they were just all floating around, you know? So it helps organize because, you know, like I've been on the spiritual journey, like most of my life. I started reading spiritual books really young. And sometimes I'm like, I don't know how I know this, you know, I can't remember. So if I'm like, okay, I want to bring that up, then I have to go back and I'm like, you know, where did I find that? And so then now I'm going back to these other things and I'll like reread them. And I'm like, wow, I didn't even, when I read that 10 years ago, I wasn't in the same place and I did not hear it properly.
I've been having that same experience lately because I've been pulling up, we were talking earlier about, I've been doing a lot of, my reading has been going back to the masters, you know, and stuff that I've read before, same exact thing where I'm like, how did I miss this? Oh yeah, I wasn't there. Like I didn't, there's no way I could have understood what I understand now. So
yeah, we are all still growing, even the people that are teaching it, you know, as we grow and we learn something else and we go back and we're like, okay, I get it. And I understand why I wasn't meant for that yet. Because I wouldn't have taken that road over here if I had already known this truth, if I had heard it right then, but I needed this detour or whatever. So it's like, It's funny how it always happens how it's supposed to happen, and people receive things when they're meant to.
Mm-hmm.
And I always try to tell people when they're like, I feel like, when I share things, someone wants to hear me, and I'm like, those people that you're talking to that don't hear you are not meant to. And they're not ready for that. So
Mm-hmm.
just stop, like
Right.
start seeking out someone else and sharing, but someone's going to be like, oh, and it's going to click for
Yes.
them. So yeah, I mean, we can't force people
Right.
to, go through some kind of awakening. It has to happen when everyone's ready. We're all on a different path. We're at different points, but if you feel called to share, like you will eventually find somebody that's
Mm-hmm.
on that vibration that's like going to appreciate
Mm-hmm.
the years that you put into this concept of studying it.
Mm-hmm.
So you will find it eventually, right? When you're meant to,
Right.
right? So there's always this like isolation on the journey sometimes where
Yeah.
you're like, wow, I might be alone forever. But like, even though I didn't have anyone to talk to about like theosophy or something, I was like, I'm still going to read about it.
Yeah.
I kind of just stopped sharing about it so much, but it was cool because it made me read more and listen more and just
Mm-hmm.
soak it in. So like when I'm teaching something, it's different, because I'm projecting out. I'm not doing the studying. So if I immediately had all these friends and I was just sharing, well, when am I going to do the work to
That's
learn
right.
the new stuff, right?
That's
So you
right.
need the isolation
You
because
have
that's
to
like,
have it.
yeah, that's
Mm-hmm.
your, you know, like you're calling to go in, read the book and then meditate on it. And then, like it might take years for you to understand the experience you even had. And if there was people in the way
Mm-hmm.
and you got so caught up, maybe there would be some ego trip or something, like if you
Mm-hmm.
were to share it right then versus like going through different experiences and you can share it from this like different place.
Exactly.
So yeah, the journeys, I just love hearing everyone's journey. It's
I
so
know.
beautiful.
I do too.
I'm like, please share with us your origin story so we can.
I tell people that's part of why I'm a good therapist because I really, at my core, I love storytelling.
Right,
I love to tell stories and I love hearing other people's stories and I can't get
right,
enough of it.
right.
And so I'm totally engaged in your story, whatever
Right.
it is.
Yes, it's definitely fun to hear how everybody came about,
Yes.
where they're at. So, could you give us some details on your project, Grid Knoxville, Grid the Planet, and what kind of impact does this create?
Well, this is such an exciting thing. So I taught a class on using like how to set grids up in outdoor spaces
Mm-hmm.
back in March because Ryan Teeter, who I do the healing hour with, had asked me to. He's like, "You know a lot about this stuff. Why don't you do a class?" And I was like, "I mean, why don't you do a class?" And he said, "Angelyn, come on." And so I sat with it and I sat with it and I finally was like, okay, I can do this. And then magic started happening. As I started to meditate on, because this is what I do with my classes, I meditate on what is supposed to be, like what does it need to look like, and how's it going to come together, and who do I want to be there. And I had this experience where I was just like lit on fire. And it was not different really than at the beginning when I was seeing all the stuff with Color of Kismet. I was seeing my hometown or my town of Knoxville where I live lit up with all of this geometry.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that part of what this was about was gridding Knoxville to prepare for it being a crystal city. I believe it's a crystal city here.
Yeah.
And we needed to pull in the healers that need to be here and we need to pull in the people who need to be healed. And so I just created I just created it and
Right.
I taught the class and I really tried to get people who took the class involved in the project and some of them were. And over this year, all of 2021, we've met once a month, random people. So sometimes it's two people, sometimes it's no people, sometimes it's six people. And then I hand them a location and they go set up a grid and they connect it to the sun sphere, which is here in Knoxville.
Uh-huh.
And then essentially we just fill up the sun sphere whenever we pass by with all the good energy. And we intend that, of course, that it continues to feed all of the grids. So, what I believe the project is really doing is to help bring alive and to connect our grids with grids from 15 years ago, last year, 50 years ago, 100 years ago, a million years ago,
Right.
several thousand years ago, and they're all, what I see happening is that they are all merging and sort of coming up out of the ground to to create a portal, really,
Mm-hmm.
in Knoxville, so that it can achieve the vibration that it will achieve,
Right.
someday. I'm not saying that my project is the reason this is happening. It's an infinite amount of projects together
Right.
that is creating this. This is just part of it.
Right.
But I feel very strongly that it was something that I had to do, and that I wanted to be part of. And so that's what it is. And um, yeah, we just finished last month gridding all of Knox County. We've pulled in, so there's a total of 7 states that are now involved. So outside of Knoxville, and
Right.
also Mexico. We have a grid in Mexico that are all hooked up
Oh.
um, to the sun sphere. And I really do see layers across the whole planet of grids. And I'm very hopeful that as people wake up more and more, that this is something they're open to, and that they will add their own grids that they're setting in their backyard
Right.
and all over the place, to each other, and attach it to the sun sphere. If you want to do that, you can email gridtheplanet@gmail.com and add your grid to our grids to the
Wow.
yeah. And there's a map there, you can see where all the people who've set their grids up and connected them to ours.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Knoxville is really special. And I never fully grasped it. But recently, as I am finding people to be on the show and stuff, I'm like, we are rich
Yes.
with healers.
Yes.
And I cannot tell you, I had a girl and I kept bumping into her at things, but I didn't know her. And we finally started talking, and she had had a similar past life as me. So I was like, that's probably why we connected. And she was like, I didn't even want to come here. There was nothing that could keep me from here, but I didn't, like I had to be pulled here.
Mm-hmm.
And then I met this other girl like a week later, and she was like, I don't even know why I'm here. Like, and
Mm-hmm.
these people move from different states.
Yeah.
And I was like, our mountains are like filled with quartz, right? Like, I feel like that
Mm-hmm.
when you say the Crystal City, like we are full of crystal, like it's
Yeah.
bringing them in. So it's wild how many people are moving. And then now, like, there's all these people from California coming in, for whatever reason, they might not even be aware of why they're coming here,
Right.
but it's happening, like influx
Yes.
of people traveling here.
Well, I mean, I'm trying to even think, you're one of the maybe 10 people I know that's from this area. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
from this area.
Right.
And I would have never ended up here if I hadn't had my son.
Uh-huh.
I was like, I went to school here, and then I lived in Miami, and then I lived in Oregon, and then I lived in Massachusetts, and I was planning on going to the Southwest next, and then I got pregnant, and it was like, oh,
I guess,
well, I guess I
yeah.
need to go somewhere that's more like, and Knoxville, where I went to school. That's not
Mm-hmm.
even where I'm from. This is where I landed, and
Right.
I have always told my son, it's because Grandmother Mountain called us, and
Right.
that's why we're here. And then I started reading this book like 3 months ago, 2 months ago, that was talking about, it was written in the 90s, and it's talking about the reawakening of the Great Smoky Mountains and
Mm-hmm.
what's happening. And um, then that got me on this track of like ancient archaeology in North America. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm finding that there was, I had no idea that the Appalachian Mountains are the oldest place on the planet. Like, this is where um, many would argue that there is traceable, like, we know for sure.
Right.
And that's really mind blowing. It makes sense, though, why so much medicine grows here easily. Why,
Right.
you
We have all
know,
the seasons,
mm-hmm.
and it's like protected. I always
Yes.
was told as a kid, with some of those tornadoes and stuff, they're like, oh, we're protected here because of our mountain. And so I always was like, okay. And I just like didn't even like, I wasn't fearful because
Mm-hmm.
I lived in like a valley surrounded by mountains. So I was like, we're fine. The tornadoes don't get in here.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a beautiful energy. When I was a kid, I was a little resentful, you know, because I grew up in like Oliver Springs, Oak Ridge, and it's smaller town, which you have more simple-minded people, which they're beautiful in their simplicity. But it's you know, I have like a lot of Aquarius energy. I'm like, New Age, you know, let's meditate and study the occult. So I'm the only one, you know, that I know from my town that is even into this kind of stuff. So it was hard. But as I like started growing out, you know, into Knoxville and like meeting these other people, I'm like, I can see why I was placed here. And I've never really had this call to travel and live anywhere else, even though I didn't necessarily want to be in my small town anymore. But I really, in a meditation one day, received this thing was like, you incarnated right here, and this is where you're supposed to be. I don't have to travel. Like, I can look at art and like cry, and I'm like, oh, I'm there. Like, it's like, because I have this wild ability to astral project anywhere, I don't physically have to travel, so I don't have to work for hours and hours to save up money to go to France, because I can go to France whenever I want, you see? So it gave me this like freedom of like not feeling this desire to see all these different things, but like to go when I need that, but to really be present here where I was supposed to be. So yeah, it's really wild. But I was listening to Coast one day, and this blew my mind and I don't even remember who the guy was, but he was like, Oak Ridge, Tennessee is on an energy portal. And they knew about it, and that's why they put Y12 there, and that's why they built the atomic bomb there, is because there's a huge energy center, and that's literally where I incarnated into, you know. And I feel like a lot of us are drawn to that energy center, you know. So maybe they used it for dark. You can use all these kind of things for good and bad, but you know, there is something to it.
Absolutely.
You know, so it's a beautiful thing to finally appreciate where you're from, and just be like, yes, we're building something here, you know, we're changing it. So thank you for doing the grid work.
Oh,
and
yes.
Yeah, we need that.
It's been so fun, and it's been so surprising. I just wasn't expecting it to feel like what it feels like.
Right.
We're making grids out of bluffs and bodies of water and trees that are old, and I don't know. There's just some kind of beautiful magic that has been happening. It's been really exciting, and I'm very grateful to have been able to help do it.
Right. I love when people follow the call, you know. And I think about like the story of Noah or something. Like, people are like, he's crazy, whatever. But like, I think we all kind of go through this, and something happens, and we're like, oh, I feel crazy, but I can't get it out of my head. I don't know how to explain it, but I'm supposed to say this thing or build this thing or create this thing. And I love hearing people say, I didn't understand it, but I did it anyways, because the call was there and I couldn't get it out of my mind. And then they create something amazing out of it, you know? So I'm always like, if you get the call, you know, maybe you can't do it right away, but keep letting that energy, you know, be a part of you, you know, keep allowing it some space, and at some point something will come out of it.
Right. And you know, when I think of things like the Patreon page came up in like 2019, and is something that was like right there, but it seemed too far out to me. It seems like I just wasn't there. And every time I asked, like, do I need to let this go? It was like, no. Well, okay, well, do I need to do it right now? No.
Right.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll just keep it right here.
Right.
And then when it was time, it was very easy. It picked up. I found the people who could help me. You know, it's all such a magical, beautiful journey.
Yes, it really is. And we just align together and start sharing, and there's just, life is so beautiful. Like, when you get on the path that you're meant to be on, like, everything becomes so beautiful and interconnected. You can actually see how it's interconnected, and you're like, wow, I do trust that there's there's something divine going on, because like this is so beautifully written out, you know, and it's just like a beautiful experience. So. All right. Well, we're kind of wrapping up our episode. Could you share with our listeners the best way to contact you, keep up with some of the different projects you have going on?
Yes. I am on Instagram and Facebook, Color of Kismet on both of those. And I'm on YouTube also. And then I have a website at colorofkismet.com where you can look at all of the events that I have coming up, all the stuff that I do. You can sign up for the newsletter if you want. You can find out about my classes that I teach. You can get to the Patreon page from that. And you can buy product. And you can email me and ask me if, questions about therapy or whatever.
All
So
right.
everything can be done from colorofkismet.com.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, thank you
Yes.
so much for coming
Thank you
out.
so much for having me.
Yes, anytime. Anytime you like, if you ever get a little feeling of like I need to share something, then you're always welcome on the
Okay.
show.
Thank
So
you.
yeah. So, and thank you all for listening. Tune in next week on the Astral.